Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm McKenna. I'm the owner of Murder by the Book in Houston, Texas, and I'm excited to be back on here today with one of my favorite authors, an absolutely delightful lady, Hannah Dennison, who's joining us from Devon, England. For those of you who are tuning in to our events for the first time, welcome. For those of you who join us frequently, as you know, you can find a full listing of our upcoming virtual events at murderbooks.com. Or on Facebook right now, we have all the events listed through the end of September. We also have an interesting event, a cool event this Saturday, Paula Hawkins in conversation with Lee Child. It's a ticketed event, but Paula Hawkins, of course, the author of Girl on the Train, and Lee Child, the author of the Jack Reacher series. I think if you do want to participate in that, you've got about 24 more hours to get the book ordered, and we can get you Zoom information. We have these events all the time. There's definitely one of your favorite authors who's going to be talking with us shortly, especially now that with the rise of COVID cases again, we're kind of exclusively doing virtual events for the foreseeable future. Anyway, you'll be seeing lots more of me and John on here for some time. And speaking of John, he is a huge fan of Hannah's and actually read the book. And he is the one who's done all the questions today. So credit to him, but he is working in stores. So I'm going to be hosting and interviewing Hannah, but all the wonderful, thoughtful questions come from John. If you're watching and you have any questions, you can put those in the live chat on YouTube or in the comments here on Facebook, and we'll get to them in a little bit. And also, as always, if you want more information or you're inclined to order books from us, which we would greatly appreciate, I've put a link in the comments with all of that information. Now, without further ado, let me bring on Hannah. Hi, Hannah. How are you?
Hi. Good. Yeah, it's really, really great to be able to do this because I so miss traveling with all the COVID things, and your stories are absolutely a favorite of mine. So this is great. This is fabulous that I can sort of zoom in, as they say,
Yes.
from a different country.
It's great to see you. My mom and I have tickets for our annual London trip in January, and I don't know if that's going to be worked out or not. We'll just fingers crossed. You know, they're still flexible, but when I purchased them in March, I was a little more hopeful than I am now that is going to work out. So anyway, speaking of lack of travel, we'll see how that goes. But it's good to see you here virtually. It's always a delight to host you at the store. And I'm excited to talk with you today about Danger at the Cove. Let me do your official intro really quickly, and then we'll get to it. So Hannah Dennison was born and raised in Hampshire, but spent more than 2 decades living in California. She's been an obituary reporter, antique dealer, private jet flight attendant, and Hollywood story analyst. Hannah continues to teach online mystery writing workshops for the UCLA Extension Writers Program in Los Angeles. In addition to the Island Sisters series, Hannah writes the Honeychurch Hall Mysteries and the Vicky Hill Mysteries, both set in the wilds of the Devonshire countryside, where she now lives with her 2 high-spirited Hungarian Vizslas. And as I said, we're here to talk about the second in this series, Danger at the Cove. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this series in general, and then specifically what is happening in Danger at the Cove?
So, well, the Island Sisters Mysteries, which I actually, to be honest, wanted to call them the Silly Sisters Mysteries because it's set on the Isles of Scilly, but I was outvoted on that one. So they're set on these very small islands, which is about 28 miles off the southwest coast of Cornwall. To get to them is very difficult. You have to take either a helicopter, a plane, or a horrific ferry, which lasts about 2 3/4 hours. The locals call it the Great White Stomach Pump for obvious reasons. It has no stabilizers. But when you get to these islands, they are so beautiful. And that's where I decided that I was going to set a mystery on a fictional island that I created myself. But I sort of based it on Tresco, which is one of the 5 inhabited islands in the Isles of Scilly. And basically, because I actually was in the UK, I've only just moved back from the States, actually. I think I've been here maybe 2.5 years now. I have a sister, and sort of having been away for 25 years, getting back into the groove of being among my family again and getting to know my sister again has been quite an interesting experience. And so I thought that will be quite a good relationship to introduce into this series. So Danger at the Cove and the Island Sisters Mysteries are about two sisters who have not been together for very long. Again, one of them was a Hollywood producer, no surprise there. But my protagonist is the younger sister, and she's now widowed, and the two of them inherit. They've sort of become chatelaines, really, of this very crumbling Art Deco hotel on this tiny island. And of course, murder and mayhem ensue. But the Art Deco hotel was something that I really liked that period of history, and of course, I had to add a golden age library to it, which is always good. So there would have been literary salons and things like that had happened back in the 30s. And the two sisters are sort of faced with lots of different challenges apart from the actual mystery or a murder taking place, normally sort of with such a small environment. That's the other thing. So it's sort of like a locked room mystery. I wanted to explore what it was like to have two sisters getting to know each other again. Because I don't know if anyone else has siblings or anything like that who perhaps they haven't seen for a while, but it's almost like you go back to old sort of patterns of when you were children. And it's almost like neither of us allow the other one to have changed, even though it's all these years later. So it's, so that's sort of basically the premise for it. Yeah.
Excellent. So I think you've kind of answered this already, but John was wondering what specifically drew you to the Scilly Isles as a setting?
Well, actually, funnily enough, it was through my sister. She had a friend who was the HR director for one of the resorts there on Tresco, which is one of the one I've based it on. And she worked there for 8 years. And she said that because the islands are so remote and so difficult to get to, that people who went to work there were either hiding from something or running away from someone. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting premise. I like that. And of course, because it's beautiful too, I thought it was a really unusual setting. And so that's what spurred me on. And at first, she was very chatty about sharing all the sort of island secrets that she remembered. And then when she realized that it was actually going to be put into a book, she sort of kind of went a bit quiet. But I kept reassuring her that no one ever recognizes themselves in a book. And, besides, it sort of like takes on a life of its own anyway. So it's quite different from when she worked there. That was really good, a good resource to have. And there's no police there. There's no police. There are no street lights. There are no cars. The nearest hospital is you have to get onto a boat to take a boat to St. Mary's, which is the big island, if you know what I mean. So it's perfect for murder, actually, because you are trapped. So
absolutely. So what kind of research did you do about the shipwrecks around the Scilly Isles?
Well, I actually didn't know you were going to ask me that question, but I came prepared.
Okay, great.
Because I found this book here. I don't know if you can see it. Built on Scilly. And I had absolutely no idea. These islands are so small that over 1,000 ships were built before steel. They're all sort of the wooden galleons and things like that. And this little book has the name of every single vessel that was ever built on the Scilly Isles and what happened to it, whether it sank or it was, pirates came in, because it was where the location of the Scilly Isles, it's the sort of the pathway to the New World. So there's a lot of shipwrecks that are all over the ocean floor, treasure, all those kinds of things. It's actually terribly exciting. And it was a hideout during the English Civil War for the Royalists, and the Cromwell people were pursuing the Royalists, and this was in the 1600s. And it's just steeped in history, and that's what really drew me to it. And there's so much information as well, especially with the shipwrecks. That is very exciting, because some of the figureheads are still there from people obviously rescue if they if they find something, they restore it, and there's a galleon garden where all the figureheads are, which I stole, I have to say, because it does exist, and I put it on my island of Tregarrick Rock, and I think I'm allowed to do that as a writer, I believe.
Of course
yeah.
You are. Yeah. So Mr. Tig, the cat, is an important character in the series. Can you talk about the inspiration for Mr. Tig?
Mr. Tig he's no longer around, but he lived to be 17, and I brought him over from England, and he's just like he is in the book. He is a tuxedo cat. And I know people will probably perhaps tune off now and say I'm crazy, but I did talk to a pet psychic about him a long time ago. So I got to know Mr. Tig really well through that. And I used to call him Tiggy. And my pet psychic said, oh, no, he doesn't like that. He wants to be called Mr. Tig because it makes him sound important. So he was a bit of a character. And to be able to immortalize him in a book has been really lovely for me, because I love that cat very much. But he doesn't kind of solve anything, but he's, I can play with the psychic type of stuff if I want, but that's been fun.
What else did the psychic tell you? I'm fascinated by this. So
Okay.
It didn't change, but what else? We'll get back to the book in a second.
Yeah, well, okay. So he said, and this was really weird because obviously I didn't say anything to this psychic guy, and he said, oh, Mr. Tig wants to tell you something, that he was really excited about this lizard that he was managed to catch in the courtyard, but he was really disappointed because he said it tasted like plastic. So I know, and I do remember him catching the lizard, and I actually remember him spitting it out. So I guess that was true. It's just crazy stuff like that. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Okay, all right. We're gonna get back to the book, but I mean, that's not something that someone would just like say, especially since you had seen him eat a lizard and spit it out. That's crazy. That's crazy. Fantastic. Okay. So John was wondering, as a follow-up, during the editing process, do you do a cat pass after finishing the book to make sure that he's featured prominently enough?
Actually, you know what? That is such a great question, because he is on the cover, and I somehow have to weave him in without him being too obvious.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I did do a cat pass, and I had to sprinkle in a few meows here and there, so that he wouldn't be forgotten. But now I'm thinking, oh gosh, what he needs to do more. He needs to be more active. That was a very good question. Thank you, John.
All right. So film rights and finding financing play a big part in this. And obviously you have some experience with that in your bio. So how much did you draw from that? And then also, is there any of your own experience? Have your books been optioned for films or TV? Do you have any Hollywood connections with your books? So kind of a two-parter, Hollywood books.
Well, definitely my own experience played a huge part in creating Louise, who, in fact, at the time, I don't think she was even a Hollywood producer when I first thought about her to start with. I thought she was going to be in advertising or something, and then she sort of changed a little bit. And I thought, I'm crazy not to use my own experiences, which were quite challenging. And the book, without giving anything away, there was a book that I was so passionate about getting made into a movie myself, and it took so long. And I actually had what they would call A-list cast attached and everything. Like I had Meryl Streep, and it was so exciting. And then one piece of the financing dropped out, and it just completely collapsed. And that happened so many times to me, because I was really an independent producer, even though I worked for Hollywood studios, getting all the experience of reading scripts and stuff. So I had a lot of connections. It's still incredibly difficult to get a movie made, and more so nowadays as well than ever, I think. I have had some interest in some of my books and things like that, but nothing quite that's actually gone for it. because also it's sort of a little bit misleading, because often you get optioned and it's for a really small amount, but if it gets a green light, that's when you get a large amount. But a lot of the time, sort of people who option books and stuff like that they just want to hold on to them and see where they go, as opposed to, I'm buying this and we're going to make it next year. So that's something that's to be aware of, that when things do finally get made, it's a huge achievement. Like Anne Cleeves and her amazing books, I mean, those are just fabulous. So
in the series, the series based on them are just so good too. Like, I mean, she's really just with the Brenda Blethens, and then like now she's got, I mean, she had Shetland, and I think that her new series is also underway, and so like you just
I mean, that's what they do. They sort of then think, oh, what else have you got? Let's have a look at what else you've got. And her new series is set in North Devon. So I live in South Devon, so I know exactly where her new series is, and it's just gorgeous up there. It has a different atmosphere from where I am. I'm in the South Hams, which is much more mellow, whereas the North Coast is a little bit more rugged. And so it's very interesting up there, even though it's only about 50 miles from me. England's so different. I'm sure you found that when you came to England, every part of the country is so different.
Yeah, absolutely. So were there particular challenges writing a mystery set on an island with so few ways off the island?
Oh my God, yes. I can't tell you. I was thinking, what on earth am I doing? I'm going to have to make it much bigger, like, Harry Potter's Hogwarts, which got bigger and bigger with every film. I didn't set out to write an island mystery, actually, a locked room. And it was really, really hard. But I have an amazing editor at Minotaur, and she was so good at seeing things I couldn't see. At the end of it all, I thought, I think I'm going to throw myself under a train. Actually, this is really hard, this book. But I think I managed to pull it all together at the end, considering it's such a small space where everyone is, and without the whole going into the Cabot Cove type of situation. Of course, you have to, because there's so few people there. So yeah.
Fortunately, mystery readers, especially cozier mystery readers, are happy to suspend belief in reality and the fact that, on this tiny island with no police, people would be dropping dead in a series. So I think you're really okay.
I'm so glad. Yeah. So and also trying to make the killer not obvious when you've got such a small cast of characters as well, because you're already losing two, your protagonist and my sidekick Margot and Evie. You're already losing two down. I have like 7 left or something. So
okay, so Patty has a very unique investigation style. What was your inspiration for her?
She's a combination of a friend of mine who looks just like I imagine Patty to look. She's, with the beautiful, sort of sweetheart face and the big brown eyes and stuff. But she's sort of based on another friend. I think writers base a lot of their characters on friends they know, but because we mash them up, it's difficult to do it. But this friend of mine is very she's very direct. Her nickname's the General, actually. We call her the General, which gives you a clue. She doesn't know she's called the General, actually. So yeah, I think Patty, I had a lot of fun with Patty, actually, because she's almost like a Columbo type character, but a lot more sort of 21st century, I suppose. Yeah, I think I enjoyed writing her.
Excellent. So John had a question about kind of referencing back to the Honeychurch Hall series too. But as I mentioned, when I give credit again to John for all these great questions, it's just timing as to why I'm doing the chatting with you today instead of him, since he's read, I think, all of your books. But anyway, in the Honeychurch Hall series, Kat's mother's a romance author. And then in this new series, The rooms at the inn are named after classic mystery writers. For this one, how did you decide which authors you would name the suites after?
I think, well, one of them I actually named after an author I hadn't heard of, and that was the George Goodchild suite. And that, I think I wanted to have something familiar, but try not to always get the names that everybody knows. So I did have to be selective. But the George Goodchild was, this is sort of a bit of a shaggy dog story, so I'll keep it quite quick. But on one of my Honeychurch Hall mystery books, I was looking for a really small pocket bear, an antique pocket bear that was part of a clue, because in that series I always have an antique or something. And I was put in touch with this extraordinary woman who was 104, and she collected these little tiny pocket bears. They're this big, and the soldiers used to put them in their uniform pockets as mascots, that when they went over the top in the trenches, and they would carry them as mascot bears. So that everything has, it was really extraordinary. So she kept them. And we were talking, I went to see her and everything. She still lived on her own, which was extraordinary. And she said, oh, my father was a writer. He used to write detective fiction. And I said, oh, really? Who was it? And she said, oh, you wouldn't have heard of him, George Goodchild. So I start Googling, and I'm thinking, oh, my, he was right up there with the greats. But a lot of the male writers weren't remembered as much as the female writers, because male writers didn't spend so much time on developing character, apparently. That's what I don't know if everyone agrees or not, but that's what I was told. So so this was George Goodchild, and I became very interested in his stories, and I read them, and I really liked them. And then she said, oh, I think we've got my father's typewriter somewhere. Do you want it? And I went, oh, I thought I was going to have, I was going, of course, I'd love it. And I said, I'll look after it. I'll just be the caretaker of this very old, very rusty typewriter. But I like to think it's brought me some luck. So
that's wonderful.
I had to have the George Goodchild suite.
That is a wonderful story. So if you had to choose one or maybe two, who is your favorite Golden Age mystery writer?
I definitely like Dorothy L. Sayers. I do love her. And I have to say, of course, Agatha Christie. And I don't want to be so obvious, but it's so hard to...
How can you ignore her?
Yeah. Also, by the way, I only live a few miles from Torquay and from Greenway, where, her summer home was. And it's Agatha Christie Week coming up. The festival is coming up, I think, in 2 weeks' time, which is just very close to here. Yeah, so it's sort of quite nice to be that close. And my mum used to be the docent at Greenway as well. So she knows everything about Agatha Christie. So my mother's 91 now, and but if ever I complain about being stuck or my writing or anything, she just say, well, Agatha does this, or Agatha did that. So it's been quite helpful, but at the same time I wanted to kind of like, oh, yeah, okay, Mum. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Okay, we have some questions coming in, but I'm going to ask a couple more, and then we'll get to the audience questions. Again, if you have questions, put those in the comments. So let's see. All right, so I want to talk about your process just a little bit, not too much, but given that you write these intricately plotted mysteries, are you a plotter or a pantser? And then also, do you have any little rituals when you sit down to write?
Those are good questions. So I am a combination of plotting and pantser. So I basically, I definitely plot the first third of the book. And I know one of my greatest weaknesses in my writing is the fact it takes me so long, because I want to sort of set all the scene before I set the murder. So I know that a lot of times I can't get the body sooner. I need to get the body in. But at the same time, I have to set the scene. So there's always trying to find that balance. So I definitely plot quite thoroughly until usually until the first body is discovered, and then I know the ending and I know exactly how that ends, but then I have no idea how to get from that point to the end, and that's the most terrifying part for me. So it's like free falling. I know certain things might need to happen, but often they change anyway. In fact, even talking about it has made me feel like I have to go and get a glass of wine, actually. But because it makes me really nervous, because I only like it when I've finished, the third draft, and I think, oh, I quite like writing, actually. But the first three drafts are just, blood
so
out
you're
of
not the person who just sits back and loves every minute of the process.
I hate people like that. I'm sorry, it's awful to say that, but I think either they're lying. I like to think that. Yeah, I know. I would love to do that. I would love to sit down and just roll up my sleeves and just tra-la-la. But I do struggle. I struggle a lot to get it down, especially when I'm doing setting all the red herrings and the clues. But there really is a magical process that takes place. There really is. I can't understand it, but I never know if it's going to happen though. So it's not like saying every time, oh, it'll all come together. I never know whether it's going to come together. And
which is funny because you've got quite a few books under your belt now. Yeah,
I know, it's the same every time. And even Carolyn Hart, who I just love, she was so sweet. One of the very first people who ever wanted to give me a quote on my cover and all that. And she's written 63, I think, books. And every time she says, I don't know whether I can do it this time. And she's Carolyn Hart.
Yeah, of course.
So that's my process. But I do use Scrivener for any aspiring writers out there. I like the Scrivener program, which is a sort of it's not very expensive. I think it's like, I don't know, $50 or something. But it allows you to move chapters and scenes around across a cork board on your computer, and then it recalibrates and stuff. So that's quite helpful, because if you are sort of, deciding to cut and paste, it's very time consuming to keep going through Word documents and stuff. So I like that program.
Do you have any rituals?
The rituals, I have to write in my pajamas. I know, which is really embarrassing because,
no, it's great.
And I always write very early. So I'm at my computer now at 7. But that was because, I'm not sure if anyone remembers this, Julia Cameron used to do morning pages. Was it Julia Cameron? The Artist's Way. Before I started writing, seriously, I used to do The Artist's Way every morning, and it was that got me into that habit of doing that. So I have to get out of bed and straight to my computer, only stopping for a cup of tea or something. But if I get ready and I have a shower and everything, it breaks something. But I'm sure it's habit. It's just habit, really.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to pull up some questions, and I'm sure it will inspire some more. And I have a couple others that I'll ask in a little bit. But so Gail was wondering, off point, but what are some of your favorite chocolate brands? I assume she means British chocolate brands. I'm going to add to that question because I happen to know that Gail joins us for these overseas events, our middle of the afternoon events, pretty regularly. And every time she tells me what tea she's drinking. So I also want to know what your favorite kind of tea is. So chocolate brands and tea.
Well, first of all, chocolate. I've got my new favorite now, and it's the Hotel du Chocolat, which I'm sure Gail might know. Yeah, and I've actually I've embraced them as my new brand, but I only like the orange tangs. They're little they're like little tangs, little chocolate things in a pot. Those are good, and I like Cadbury's Bournville chocolate. Those are my favorites, actually. I don't go too much in all the fancy stuff, the hot chili pepper type thing. So I'm quite traditional. And then my tea, that's another discovery, again, French, actually, I think. So it's Mariage de Frères, which someone once brought.
My favorite.
Oh, it is your favorite? Isn't it? It's amazing tea.
It's amazing tea.
And I literally, about a month ago, I was in London, and they have Mariage de Frères in Covent Garden. And I went there and I got loads and loads of tea to bring home with me. But it's just my favorite's the French breakfast tea. It's just so good. Yeah.
I'm partial to Marco Polo.
Yes, I like Marco Polo. Mm-hmm.
Polo and I don't know, several Bolero. I have several of theirs that I enjoy. Between that and Fortnum and Mason's strawberry black tea, I spend way too much on tea bringing it over here. But it's funny because you can get, I think before the Covent Garden Mariage Frere opened, you could buy Mariage Frere at Selfridges. And so when I would go to London, I would stock up at Fortnum and Mason, and then we would go to Selfridges to buy French tea, which was kind of weird.
I know. I mean,
I adore Mariage Frere tea, so I'm right there with you on that.
They also have this new tea called cactus tea. It's like an iced tea. I don't know if you tried that. And it's blue. It's a beautiful sapphire blue. But you have, because when I lived in Oregon and California, I used to buy it from Market Hall Foods in San Francisco. So they don't stock everything though, but they stock a lot of the tea.
Well, I just found recently, because with COVID, I don't know if it was just, I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to get it internationally, like reliably, because so many things were getting hung up. I actually found a tea distributor outside of Dallas here in Texas.
Wow, that's amazing.
They don't do the Fortnum and Mason tea, but they stock Mariage Frere, it like loose, and they bag it. So you can order like.
That's what you want, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's still way too much money on tea.
I know, it's so expensive. I used to get nagged for that. It's like, well, I said, well, it's okay, so it's like $1 a day or something on my tea bag, on one tea bag or something. But
yeah, it's fine. It's fine. But anyway, I'm very excited that I know that I can get Mariage Frere from Dallas, a local small like little tea importer company. Anyway, okay, so that covers our tea taste. The same person, Gail, was wondering, can you go home again? What's it like moving back to the UK after so many years away?
I actually really love being home, and I think it's because I really missed, all my family were here. You know, my mom, my sister, my daughter, they all live here. I moved back to a different place where my family had moved to. So even though I grew up in Devon, it was a different part of Devon, so about 50 miles from where I lived. So in a way, it was starting again, and that's something that seems to be a theme in all my books, actually, about starting over, because I think I'm interested in that. It's disappointing in a way because of COVID, you know, that I haven't really been able to move around very much. So there's that. I definitely have loved being back with the weather. That has been something which surprised me. I don't even mind if it's raining or anything like that. But it is very small here. And I do miss America, but I did get my citizenship before I left. So I am a dual citizen, so I can always, you know, if I wanted to move back, I could. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay, back to book discussion. Will there be a third book with Evie and Margot, possibly another sequel where the hotel is finished and filled with suspicious guests?
Well, I'm hoping there will be. I think I'll know maybe early September whether they will have another one, because I already have an idea, of course. And I think it would be really fun to do a third book. I'm hoping it will. So the answer is yes. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So this one is, do your best with this. Why are UK authors so very good at writing mysteries?
I think we all are, aren't we? I think I love all I have loads of author friends who are American, and they write the most amazing mysteries. That's a tricky question.
I know, that's why I said do your best with this.
Yeah, it's like, oh no.
All right, so I'm gonna issue just a disclaimer that no one here thinks you're gonna be conceited or say anything anti-American if you try to answer why UK authors are so good at mysteries.
No, I have loads of friends who are American authors, and I love them. and their books are so good. But we don't have that many. We don't, as a cozy, they're only just beginning to gain traction here. You know, as you probably know, that England prefers darker stories. That has been a thing for quite some time. So I think it's really
feel like
recently.
the history of mystery in Britain maybe goes back further or seems stronger with so many icons, whether it's Sherlock Holmes or Christie or you know, there's such a even if it's a darker book, there's such a traditional British crime just background,
Yeah, absolutely,
and exists, that I think that maybe there's some advantage there culturally, with, you know, when you think about our TV shows too. I mean, we do have American TV, you know, crime shows, but the British detective shows that are, you know, on PBS here, whatever, Masterpiece, are just always so wonderful. Like we were talking about the Anne Cleves series, and
yeah.
I mean,
We also have
Manchester, so many.
We have Midsummer Murders, of course, you know,
yes,
which I love Midsummer Murders. But there was, going back to your point about the sort of history of it, there was the detection club in the 30s, wasn't it, that started. I know that Martin Edwards, I'm sure you've had Martin Edwards in your store to do the golden. Yeah, and so that, I think that sort of started a real serious tradition about mysteries, because you had to be invited to be a member, and there are all these rituals that you go through to become a member, I believe, with skulls and candles. It's all
a weird thing.
Yeah, I know. So and I know that a lot of the Golden Age mystery writers were part of that set. But then you guys had the Algonquin Circle, didn't you?
Sure,
yeah. So, but not so much mystery though, or crime.
Right. We had Dorothy Parker and her witticisms and the
Love
Algonquin Round Table.
Yeah.
But, you know, we were, it was, you know, Raymond Chandler and Dashiell Hammett in a very different line, subgenre of crime fiction that was happening here in the US, that was happening, you know, at the same time in the UK. You were, you know, doing classic Golden Age, and we were walking down these main streets. So I think it's just different.
I think there was also something about that, actually, to your point, where because England, I did read it somewhere and I've forgotten where, so I'm not saying it's, you know, I'm just sharing, that because England had been suffered so much from the First World War, and that sort of generation, that lost generation, they didn't really want to dwell on the darkness of life. So that's why so many weren't as mean streets, gritty as the Americans, that weren't actually invaded per se. So I think that might have played a little bit into it as well, about why they're lighter, if you know what I mean, or not so graphic when it came to that. Yeah.
Sure. Well, when you think too, even it was remarkable how, like, Marjorie Allingham, right? She wrote these very traditional Campion mysteries that weren't heavy, and then it was notable that Tiger in the Smoke after World War II had such a darker, like, serial killer in it. Like that was so unusual for you know, British mystery at the time, that it had a darker angle. So I'm sure what you're saying about tone and the need for a resolution as well, you know, at the end of the book, and justice served after what had been happening in society, I'm sure that there's something to that.
Yeah, it's because it's very much, it's definitely in a setting and environment of the times, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. I think did we have another question, or did I just have my own question? Oh, I'm going to ask a question because I'm interested. I'm always interested in this, but given the conversation about pet psychics and you saying there's some magic to writing, I'm wondering how this is going to play out. So, do you ever dream about your characters?
I don't dream about them, but they are always the first thing I think about in the morning, or the last thing at night. So I'm always thinking, I wonder what Evie would do now. I wonder what she's doing now. Or so they're very much in my head all the time. So, but then I don't remember my dreams. Isn't that funny?
No, I don't either. I don't either. But
so
sometimes people, some authors say they do, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah.
And again, like I mean, I'm not the person who remembers my dreams either. So it would be worthless to me if I dreamt about something. I would not be able to answer yay or nay. But
I do wake up in the night and have an idea or something, and I'll write that down. So I don't know whether that's a trigger or a dream. I don't know whether it woke me up or not. So it's a good question.
Other people have told me that, you know, when you're kind of in that like half awake state in the morning, that they frequently think about their characters and get ideas in that state too.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Like a waking dream almost. So
yeah, I definitely can relate to that. No, definitely, especially when I'm stuck on something.
Right.
But then that's more of a nightmare, really. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, I have another question. One of our very regular viewers, Susan, has been asking this at a lot of events, and I love it. So if you had to put together a dinner party with 3 authors, living or dead, who would you bring to your dinner party?
Well, I think about my friends that I hang out with at Malice, you see. So that you'd have a real laugh, you know, and they'd be fun. Yeah. So I'll try to be grown up about this and mature.
You don't have to be.
Oh, well, let me think. I definitely, if I was talking about contemporary times, like now, I would have Kate Carlisle and Jen McKinley, and I think probably Ellie Alexander, but then I want Daryl as well. So that now it's becoming a friend.
That's fine. It can be a 5. We can set 5 chairs out.
I'm going to have a party. I'll have a party instead, and then we'd have the guest of honor would be. Let me see. I want someone who you know who I really like. I just love MMK or Mary Stewart. One of those older. I know they're dead, you know, but I really
that's the point. Living or dead, you can.
Yeah, I'm really getting into MMK's mystery writing now. I've read nearly all her Death in Berlin, Death in Zanzibar, because I didn't know that she was such a mystery writer. And they do, even though they're sort of a bit dated because they're set in the 60s, they do stand the test of time, actually. And it's quite charming, the sort of male-female relationships, mind you. It's a little bit sort of dated in that respect, but the stories are good and her descriptions are amazing. So I think she'd have to come. MMK.
It is so funny. I have not heard anyone mention MMK as an author in probably 2 years. Like even in a mystery bookstore, the books are out of print, and you were the second author to bring up MMK in like 2 weeks. I can't remember who I was talking with, but they were essentially traveling the world with MMK and loving. Yeah, it's just it's so funny, and you know, such an obscure reference. But I love that. So Mary Stewart or MMK?
Yes, and the thing about MMK is that of course everyone remembers her from the Far Pavilions, you know, because that was her like breakout book. So I thought, oh well, I'll read that, and then it's like 1,000 pages.
Yes,
and it's, you know, it's sort of something you really need to read on a plane or on the beach or something. So and then her other books are so different. But I love Mary Stewart because she's sort of just that classic. There's that wistful, I don't know, haunting type of tone to all her stories. Yeah, and Daphne du Maurier. I have to have her as well. Yeah, no, actually, I love Daphne du Maurier. Yeah.
So you'd have a very strong Gothic element happening, and it would be pretty.
Yeah, maybe I should take a look at that. Actually.
Excellent. Well, so since we don't know 100% if there's another book in the works, but fingers crossed, do you want to tell us your idea on that, or do you want to respectfully decline?
No, I really definitely think it's time to discover this Isadora that Cador has been looking for years, since he was a child, who's one of the characters in the hotel. And because he's just come back from the Bahamas by doing some offshore, you know, sort of salvage marine. He's a marine salvage. I think it's time to do some treasure on that and just do some more digging with the the shipwreck thing, because I started watching loads of shipwreck type of exploratory YouTube things, and I got so excited about it. And I think I quite like to do that, because sometimes people still find stuff all the time, don't they? I mean,
yes,
all the
it's
time.
amazing.
It wasn't that long ago, I think, when they found the billions of something or other. So I think I quite like to delve down that, but I also wanted to include a writer's retreat weekend, because there's always a sort of balance, between one story and then the backstory. Then I can get more characters on, because I need more characters on.
There's a retreat. There's your cast of
characters. There should be more characters I can get rid of.
Yeah.
But I am still working on the Honeychurch books as well. I have another one of those coming out in November.
Wonderful.
That series is continuing, and then I have 2 more, I think, in that series too. So writing 2 a year is quite difficult, quite a challenge. Only because I thought stupidly I do that, and then I switch and do that, but usually it all comes at the same time, because it's with 2 different publishers. So I'm in awe of people that can write 2 books a year. I don't know how they do it. So. Well,
you're doing it, so
no. Well, and I just about survived.
I'm amazed. This is a little off topic, but you were saying as people are finding stuff all the time. I love the show, The Detectorists. Have you watched that? The British show?
We love stuff like that.
I mean,
I love it.
How people just still, occasionally you just see a news article about another hoard's been found. I'm like, how are we just now finding this? But
I know. It's so, especially up north, with the Vikings and the silver that's still there. I just love stuff like that. And I think in another lifetime, I would love to have done something like that, whether it was archaeology or just doing that show, really, because there's another one. I think it's called Battlefield Detectives that we have here, which I love that one. That's really interesting how they work out the battlefields and all the stuff that went with that. Yeah, anything like that I like.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that we have made it through our discussion today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great.
I will say, again, since he's not here, a special shout out to John. And if you are a Cozy fan and you're watching this, John has a great resource on Instagram. It's at John's Cozy Corner. It started a few months ago specifically about cozy mysteries. And I will also give a plug for our Murder by the Box subscription plan, where we have John's Cozy Corner, which every month you can have a new Cozy Mouse Market shipped to your door, one of John's recommendations. And it's always either first in series or a new series by a longstanding author, something like that. And people adore John's Cozy Corner Murder by the Box subscription. Makes a great gift, yada, yada. So if you're a cozy mystery fan, definitely check out this series by Hannah. We love her books. And then you might check out Murder by the Box. Hannah, thank you again so much for joining us this afternoon. Congrats on the new book. And
thank you very much.
Fingers crossed we'll see you in person at some point.
I know, it'll be my very first stop. So I can't wait to travel actually and come over. But thank you so much for thinking about me, inviting me. It's really, really nice.
Of course, it's always a pleasure. Have a wonderful evening for you. Yes, and I'm going to get to work. Bye.
Oh, exactly. Okay, thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you. Bye.